I'm recording. Go ahead.
Okay. Hi, my name is Martin and Stiltz. I'm 60 years old. I live in Havana, Illinois. Uh, Currently, at my age, I'm pretty disabled right now, and I was when I was 33. I was sent over here from the federal government, from the state of Indiana. They retired me. And I stayed with some friends when I first come over, and I was down in Chandlerville, and I was living down there right along an obituary of Panther Creek. And it's right along 78. And you go up 78, and there's a little creek that follows that, and that's a little Panther Creek. And before you get to the back road of Chandlerville, I lived right in the center of all that, between the city and that, and the back road, which is Finn Lane. And I had a friend of mine that lived there, and I was staying with him, and we would always go mushrooming. To our north is all flatlands, the Sangamon River, and to the south of that was all wooded area, mainly the Jim Edgar State Wildlife Refuge. It's pretty flat to the north, as you can expect, and that leads into the river bottoms when you follow the Sangamon River. And in the west side of that, as you follow Panther Creek, it goes straight west. It crosses the road of the last road, Finn Lane, and it goes past a farmer's. Well, I wouldn't call him a farmer. His friend of mine did a little work for him, helped him out a little bit. He was a pretty old guy, and he had basically a ranch and a junkyard in the back. And he would let me mushroom hunt on his property, and I would go up this Panther Creek until I got past his cow pasture and his horse pastures. And I'd follow that left, and I would go down to a center, and I would cross over a large fence right there. And the first obituary to the right of that, when you go down, it's a road that runs right down that, and it's a one-lane sand road, grass in it, seldom used. And when you get around to the end of that hill, going alongside of it, and there's the water on the bottom of the creek, and that hill comes up. And off to the side of that hill would be, let me see if I can, off to the side of that hill would be where I'd find all these mushrooms. And me and my friend would go there every year. We had a little incident one year when we had one in. I believe this was several years before my main event that I had happened. We had found a deer laying right there where we have our mushrooms. And he had seen that, and he said, "Look at that deer. It's that thing is mutilated." I said, I don't think so. It looks to me like, nature's taking its course. And he said, "Well, I've been an avid hunter all my life with deer." He said, "That thing's got a hole in the side of its ribs. And it still had the rest of the hide covered on it." And he would stuck his hands down in there and felt absolutely no ribs, but he could feel them in the hide around it. So something had hit it. I said, "Well, I said, he's got a horn gone, and he probably got into a fight, got stuck, and it broke." He said, "No." He said, "Well, maybe." And we started walking off, and he said, "Wait a minute." He's come back here. He said, "No, this thing is mutilated." He said, "Look at its neck." And the hide was off from the neck up, and the neck was broken. And it was split from the back to spine up by the skull all the way down. And the whole neck was twisted over. And that lasted there for about 3 years before it was gone. So I thought that was kind of strange. And of course, back then, that was 20 years ago. It was around 2001, 2003. I got it written and in my safe, and didn't have a camera or didn't have cell phones back then. And after 3 years, them bones were gone. The following year after that, a friend of mine, me and my same buddy that was out there, we walked to the bottom of that hill in that same obituary in that creek, and there's a large flat that's across it. And we stood on that looking for mushrooms. And when we got to that, I think when we got to that, we decided to take a break. And we were just standing there, and we was up alongside the bank, and the bank goes up about 15 feet. And we were standing there and talking and resting, and right up against that bank, he had his foot up against it, and I was standing up on it. And I said, "Did you hear that noise?" He said, "No." He said, "I don't hear anything." I said, "Well, it sounds like footprints." I said, "I think it's the hermit that's coming around here, because between that fence along that first hill and on that dirt road and turning into where we're at, there's an old hermit that lives there right alongside the creek." And so we thought it was him. And it kept getting louder and louder. And pretty soon it was thumping pretty large. And I said, "You don't hear that?" He said, "I don't hear anything." And of course, I was hard hearing, so I could hear that low sound. And it kept getting closer. I said, "It should be here by now, because it's heading straight for us. I can hear it." And then he said, "Oh, you're just hearing things." All right. So he kept talking. Pretty soon he said, "Now I hear it." He said, I said, "You're just now hearing it." I said, "It sounds like it's right on top of us." I said, "It should have been here by now." And I think it's Uner. And it just kept coming and coming, and thump got louder and louder. And he was like, "That should have been here by now." He said, "What could that be?" I said, "I don't know, but that's pretty, my chest was just thumping every step it took." And I was facing him, and he was facing the bank. And that thing walked up, and you could just feel the ground shaking. And it walked up, and it stopped at the top of the bank. When you had our hats on, I just kept my head down. I didn't want to look up, and he didn't want to look up either. And he just kind of looked up to see if he could see who was standing there, just barely looking up above the bank, hiding under his bill. And suddenly we heard some steps, and it was right behind me, and it come right down the bank. It walked right across the flat, and it went right up to the water. But when I heard this, I turned around and looked. There was nothing there. There was absolutely nothing there. I was looking for footprints because the leaves were wet, but it was making a crunch sound as it walked. My buddy, he heard it at the same time. And when he was looking up, he kind of looked over at me, and he says, and we was just standing there, just frozen. He said, "There's nothing there." I said, "No." He said, "No, behind you." I said, "I know, I looked." And pretty soon steps went down along across the creek, or on the top of the bank, went on down. I said, "Come on, let's go up and look." And he said, "No." He said, "That's just, old Junior, the hermit, going home. He always walks this way, coming back up from Beardstown." I said, through the woods. And I said, "Come on, let's just go up and look." So I grabbed hold of him and started going up, and he grabbed me and pulled me down. I said, "Let's just go look." And he said, "Tell you the truth." He said, "I don't want to look." He said, "I don't want to know what it is." He said, "I think we better get out of here." I said, "Okay." He said, "But we better make a plan." I said, "Why is that?" He says, well, we heard footsteps come up here and go across the river. And I said, well, I didn't hear them go across the stream. I didn't hear them go across the stream. I heard it stop there. He said, no, I heard the splash. He said, you're hard there. And I said, okay. And I said, I don't understand what it is. And I went over to where the footprints were because we got in a little argument. And where the prints came down right behind me and walked to the creek, I said, could you hear me walking? I said, no. He said, no. And I stopped. He said, can you hear me? I said, can you hear me walking now? He said, no. I said, because the ground's wet. There's them leaves that be making leaf sounds. And even on the other side, all the way up here, the sun was shining over there. And he said, well, so let's get out of here. And he said, let's go up the creek a little bit, cross over where the rocks are. And he said, let's go up and follow right on top of the hill the way we came in. I said, that's the way the footprints went. The footprint sounds. And because we was talking, he said, at the same time, we had the same thing that went through our heads. He was like, this is it, buddy. We're going to fight till death. And I was like, that in my head, this is it. We're going to fight till death, whatever it is. If something attacks us. And we weren't going to leave each other. We was going to stay there. And but we went ahead and crossed that river, and we was making a beeline. He said the reason why he wanted to go there, he was an avid hunter, and he'd hunt at his mother's home, and these other hunters would come out into the forest, and they'd catch him, and trap him and make fun of him and stuff when he was younger and a kid. But he learned how to outsmart them. And he'd meet with one of them at a time. And when there was only one at a time, they wouldn't say anything to him. So he said, we just heard something go around that way. And he said, something went up this way, and we didn't even see what it was. It was invisible. And I think it was just a sound that something was throwing off to make it sound that way. Not saying I know what it is, because I don't know what it was, but it's that particular area. And he said, we want to go up there and follow it that way, that sound, because you don't want to get in between those two. If you get in between, they can ambush you. I said, okay. I said, and we were scared. I mean, we think, and I told him, I said, let's go. When we got across the bridge, or the water, he said, don't stop. And I said, I need to stop a minute. He said, don't stop. I said, just for a minute. And I wanted to go back and see if it was tall grass there. That was, nothing has been through it. And I wanted to see if any water came up on the sand or, the road, or if the leaves was down. And he said, he said, what do you see? I said, nothing had crossed that river. There's no footprints or nothing that came through there. And I said, he was pretty spooked. He said, let's go. And we started going up the hill. And I said, we was on the top and we was going back to the fence so we can get out of there. And I said, if you feel something touch you and you don't see it, just start swinging. Because you don't know where it's at. Just swing everywhere and get out of here as fast as you can and try to hit it. And that was the first time I ever had an experience like that. And we got about halfway up and he started punching all over in the air. And I said, what are you doing? I said, do you feel something? I said, something touched you. And he's just screaming and yelling and just swinging. And I had to run to catch up with him. I said, is something touching you or hitting you? And he said, no. I said, why are you swinging? He said, just in case. I said, save your energy just in case. Because you run out of energy and whatever it is comes around you, you're going to need that. And we got out of there and we got back to his house and we kind of had a feeling we knew what it was. I didn't think anything of hominids at the time or a Sasquatch or a Bigfoot or, it just, Matter of fact, I never even had internet. I think I just had internet, or he had it like a week before that, and it was that old dial up, over 20 years ago. But I guess it was probably 22 years ago. And when I got to talking with him, he didn't want to speak about it. He said somebody told him it was a cow. An invisible cow. I guess that's. I
So
said,
neither one of you actually saw it.
no, there was nothing there. It was broad daylight, and it's like 20 feet behind me, and he was facing it. And I looked back, and there was nothing there. But we heard the noise up the top walking away, but we never heard the big steps walk away. And I couldn't get him to go up there with me to look and see what might have been there.
So other than invisible cows, which probably weren't there, but could there be another animal that could have done that? Could have been like coyotes running around or
um, well, the large footsteps were so large. I mean, his chest was even beaten. It was thumping his chest, and it was thumping mine. You could feel the ground just moving. Coyote couldn't do that 15 feet up. It's that. If it jumped out of a tree, if it could get it, maybe.
I'm just asking, I mean, just thinking if there anything
Yeah.
else that could have explained it, not necessarily a coyote, but
Well, I don't know. That's somebody else's guess. I have no clue, but that particular area is quite